Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Lighthouse Sessions. I'm excited. I have my new friend, Farah Jamil, with me, and she is located actually in the province of Alberta. So, from a proximity, she's my closest guest in forever. So, welcome to the show and tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here, Jeff. I'm so excited, especially with a fellow Albertan. It's always great to chat. So as you mentioned, I am based in Alberta. I am an executive coach and an ADHD coach and a consultant. I worked for many years in corporate. I led high-performing teams, did all the fun stuff as an executive, really enjoyed it. Also sat on nonprofit boards and leadership roles, which I also loved. And then as an adult, I got diagnosed with ADHD and I was like, huh, that's interesting. No one figured this out before. And by that time, I was already in a leadership role, but it made so much sense. And luckily, at that point, I had already trained as an executive coach while I was working as an executive, and I was an internal executive coach in my organization on top of my day job. And then with my diagnosis, I thought, oh, what do I do now? So I heard about ADHD coaching and I knew the power of coaching as an executive coach. So then I trained as an ADHD coach as well. Now I have my own coaching and consulting firm. I have clients from around the world where either they're my executive clients or my ADHD clients or both, because there are executives with ADHD as well. Go figure, right? So now I have my own coaching consulting firm and here we are.
I love that. Now, I won't destroy your business and share my thoughts on executives and ADHD, but if they haven't been diagnosed, it's probably because they haven't asked questions. So let's back up half a step because, first of all, I want to normalize discussions about ADHD because, right now in the mental health space, it's a little like making fun of people. We're hiding our what the world sees as a disability. And by the way, I take offense to the fact that everything that the medical community uses to describe my brain includes the word disorder or disability. Let's talk about you for a second. So, what was it that led you to go and get a diagnosis? And how did that change how you see yourself? Because I think people need to see that it's not about the diagnosis, it's about the awareness.
The things that worked for me when I was in school no longer worked for me when I was in the workplace. So, for example, I was fine with studying at the last minute, doing my assignments at the last minute, because that's when my brain could focus. So, procrastination was not a bad thing for me. And it worked really well. I would have friends say, "How in the world did you do that? You did barely studied, you barely did the thing, and you did so much better than us." And I was like, I don't know, you didn't do it that way? Like, I didn't really understand what they were talking about. And it worked for a while, and then it wasn't working anymore. The procrastination, because I was waiting for the focus to kick in. So even if I had 30 days to do something, I would typically wait until the last minute because that's when I felt like I got my best ideas. And that's what made me so good. But what started happening was I wasn't getting the focus as quickly as I used to, and then I would run into trouble. And then I start kicking myself, I should have done this earlier. Why didn't I do this earlier? The cortisol levels, the stress levels are hiking up, and it was no longer working for me. And I thought I had a time management issue. And so I even spoke to a psychologist about it. And for several months we worked together, but nothing seemed to work. And luckily, I saw a program where a journalist was interviewing a social scientist talking about ADHD, or sorry, not a social scientist, a medical, someone who was a physician and a scientist. And he was talking about ADHD. And the journalist was like, "Hey, that sounds like me." And I said, "Hey, that sounds like me too." So I talked to my psychologist, and at first he's like, "No, you don't have it." And he gave me various reasons. You're an Ivy League graduate, you've got a great job, you've got loving family and friends, you're very charming, all the things. And I'm like, what does any of that have to do with whether I have ADHD or not?
Yeah.
So luckily I knew about the DSM-5 manual, the diagnostic and statistical manual that is used by clinicians. So I in one of those lucid moments, I said, why don't we just take down that DSM-5 and go through it together? And he's like, okay, fine. So very reluctant. So he opens it up. And we go through it. And he's like, oh my goodness, you have ADHD. I said, yes, I know.
Wow, I'm shocked. For what it's worth, I've been diagnosed twice, and the last time I actually filled out the forms, and then I graded it and gave it back to the psychiatrist with the diagnosis, and she's like, "You can't do that," and I said, "I just did." And it was funny because she was talking about ADHD, and it was funny because she was relatively new to working with ADHD. And so she was quoting me from the textbook. And I said, "Oh, I don't want to be judgmental, but I'm going to fill you in on a gap." And, I'll share my experience because I think you'll find it funny. I was told I had ADHD because, and I quote, "you have trouble focusing." That's true sometimes. However, my biggest problem is hyperfocus, and that's part of the autism. But when I hyperfocus, I do not move for hours. I will forget literally, my wife laughs at me because I'm an adult male and I have to set an alarm to remember to eat lunch or go to the bathroom. And she's like, "Oh, you have ADHD, you can't focus." And I'm like, no, focus is not the problem. But now I understand that it's not focus or lack of focus, it's the ability to regulate the focus. And I'm like, "Well, why didn't you say so in the first place?"
Exactly. And this is what a lot of clinicians forget, that people who are neurodivergent present differently. So you've got a textbook, but guess what? That's like maybe one example, maybe even a few examples, but
Yeah.
the patient that's in front of them or the client that's in front of them is not always going to align perfectly what's in their textbook.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you shared that, because one of the things that I've appreciated while I've been coaching, and also just as part of my learning, is how many people don't like the term ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And one of those people include two Harvard-trained psychiatrists by the name of doctors Ned Hallowell and John Rady, who I believe both have ADHD themselves.
Yeah.
They, just like you were saying, it's like, wait, it's not that I can't focus. I can. It just depends on certain circumstances. So now they have a new term that they created recently, I think a couple of years ago now, maybe in 2024, called VAST, VAST, Variable Attention Stimulus Trait. And they chose that because they didn't like the terms deficit and disorder, because they didn't think that was accurate. It's like, no, it's not deficit, it's not disorder. It's the variable attention. So there are things that can stimulate us to have attention. So it's not a lack of attention, it's not a deficit. It's that our attention can be variable based on certain stimuli. So that's why I actually prefer VAST.
It's funny because on the autism side, they've rebranded it and it's now autism something disorder. I'm like, I still prefer Asperger's because at least there was no disorder in the word.
Oh, interesting.
But
yeah.
I think, the it's a little hard, and I'll share something funny for you. But my first diagnosis, she actually misdiagnosed me as ADHD for the wrong reasons. And when I went back and saw her, she said, "But you're all over the place. You bounce back and forth like a ping pong." And I looked at her and I said, "No, you bounced back and forth. I kept up with you." And she's looking at me, and then the realization hit. She's like, "Holy crap, I've been working with ADHD people for decades, and I've never once realized that I am ADHD." And I was like, "Oh, yay, I'm special." It took me and my little ping pong brain to keep her active enough that she saw it. And it was just funny because I don't think there's enough. Like, if you look at all of the studies, they're based on sample sizes. And a friend of mine likes to say, if you've met one nonlinear thinker, you've met one nonlinear thinker. We are not alike. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem with the DSM and any diagnostic tool, is we're arbitrarily saying this central point is normal, and everything, I hate the phrase standard deviations because it's like, I'm not a deviant. Though I do not come near standard, so I guess it is what it is. But let's talk about something I think I'm hearing, and maybe this is my bias, but I personally, when people come to me and they say, well, I'm not diagnosed, I genuinely don't care. What I look at, and this is where I came to with my diagnosis, because with the autism and with the ADHD, I almost went squirrely because I was literally dissecting my own brain and saying, okay, this goes in the autism bucket, this goes in the ADHD. Oh crap, this one goes in both. It was just, and I went, wait a minute, I don't care about what's normal. I don't care what's out there. But the better I know how my brain works, the better I can build my environment around it. So I suspect that's kind of the work you do. Is that close?
That's really close. That's actually quite correct. For me, it's less about the diagnosis because, like you said, for some, they're either undiagnosed, underdiagnosed, misdiagnosed. And when people come to me, they ask me, do I have to be diagnosed in order to work with you? And I said, no. It's all about, for me, how can we find the right structure and support that best supports your fabulous brain? So this is something that this is an analogy that I use quite often, where I say that, Nike has a great slogan, just do it. It's great. Bad for us though, because people just say, well, why don't I just do it? I'm like, oh, gee, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah.
That's not the problem. So it's a great slogan, but it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Then there was a saying that I heard from a Muslim scholar by the name of Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayah. And he says, make the sincere intention and do the work. I'm like, okay, that's a little bit better, because even in the business world, you have to have clarity on what's your goal. So make that sincere intention. What is your goal? And then do the thing, do the work. I'm like, okay, that's a little bit closer, but that still wasn't quite enough for me. So then I developed a formula for ADHD success, is what I call it. So it's like, make the sincere intention or have that clear goal, plus find the right structures and supports for your fabulous brain so that you can do it, so that you can do the work, whatever the case may be. So that's the part that I do with all of my clients, whether they're neurotypical, neurodivergent. What are the right structures and supports that you need to be your best, whether it's at home, in the office, with your friends, whatever. Every one of us needs to have that self-awareness. And that was one of the things that I appreciate about getting the diagnosis, was it forced me to pause and ask myself, do I actually know me? Because I think for a lot of my life, I was very passive in my own life. People would just tell me, oh, Farah, you're this, you do this well. I'm like, oh, okay, fine. You should consider this. Okay, sure. Because I was just, kind of going along with the flow. It's like, whatever, sure. And then I realized, wait a minute. I didn't always like those ideas. Maybe I'm good at something doesn't mean I actually like it. And so it forced me to pause and ask, what do I actually know about me? What do I actually like? What works well for me? And just as importantly, what doesn't work well for me? So I had to really get to know myself as an adult. And that has completely flipped the script for me. Now, instead of me being passive, I am active and proactive in my own life. Instead of being a bit player, I'm the main player in my own story, which is the way it should have always been. Instead of me being on the sidelines of the marathon, I'm actually in the marathon now. And I have the structure and support that I need to be my best in that marathon.
I love that approach. And for what it's worth, one summer I evaluated, I'm not kidding, I subscribed to and I took trials on 50 different CRMs, 50. And I spent at least a day on each one, and I tested each one, and I came out going, none of these work for me. And people were like, well, what's wrong with you? It's easy. And I'm like, no. I get what it's trying to do. But the fundamental challenge with a CRM, for example, is everybody has to search for the name. And once you find the name, then you find the company, and then you find your notes. The problem is my brain works. I remember the notes, and I'll have a weird keyword. One in particular was horse. I was looking for people because I remembered somebody said that they did a charity work with horses. And I was like, no CRM would allow me to find the word horses. And so I actually built my own, I jokingly call it my executive function, but the aha moment was I need, literally for my notes in my brain, I need the functionality of Google search because I don't remember somebody's name. There's a few that I do remember the name, but I will always remember the conversation, the context, whatever. And I think that was, I spent years in sales feeling shamed because I couldn't maintain a CRM. And now I'm like, but that's not how my brain works. Like, to me, it was just mindless busy work because my boss wanted me to maintain the database. And I'm like, but it doesn't help me do my job. So why am I? So I think we're masters of adapting. And, as you get older and there's a lot of work being done on as we age and as hormones change, there's a phase where the ride gets way wilder. But then it's also, the crotchety old guy, we've just learned to stop filtering. My youngest, he's like, Dad, please don't make a scene. And I'm like, but they're being an idiot. I need to tell them they're an idiot. You don't understand. It needs to come out.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness, I love that. And for those in your audience who don't know what a CRM means, I believe that's customer relationship management system. So yes. For those of you who may have your own business or any kind of side business, a CRM helps to organize your clients, your list, whatever the case may be. I think that's genius because my brain is also where I sometimes remember things in pictures. So when a client is talking to me, I will sometimes like visualize it like as if it's like a movie or a show. And one time I was working with a client for like about 8 months to a year, and he mentioned something, and then I was able to say, "Oh, this reminds me when you told me about this." And it was 8 months ago. He's like, "How in the world did you remember that?" How my brain works. So being able to search for things in unique ways, yes, that's, I think, what gives us that non-linear, out of the box, innovative thinking.
Yeah. Because anytime data is sequential like that, I need to pick in the middle and pull out. So.
Yes. And I've had many clients say that, my brain is just like, I think of it this way. And there are now some organizations that are starting to recognize the value of that non-linear innovative brain, because many organizations say, we want to be innovative. But then when someone's trying to be innovative, they're like stagnating them. So it's like, oh,
you're disruptive, be quiet.
Yeah, they want you to be innovative in a certain way. It's like, okay. Yeah. But now organizations are catching up. For example, like Ernst & Young, EY, they've actually got centers of excellence for neurodiversity, and they're recognizing the power of the neurodivergent mind. So it's great to see. But this is why it's so important for me that when I work with a client, if you want to use certain labels, go right ahead. If that empowers you, sure. But for me, I'm trying to get to the foundation of you. I'm trying to get to the root. It's like, tell me, what do you know about yourself, regardless of any labels? And then
I think that's the key piece, because everybody hides behind once you get a label, you're like, okay, I can stop digging. And to me, that was just the entry point.
Exactly. And this is why you'll also hear often, that when you get a diagnosis, it's not an excuse, it's an explanation. Great, it's an explanation. So it helped to explain what I was going through. But instead of me saying, okay, well, I guess that means I'm never going to be able to do this, or I can't do that, like, those really rigid terms, it's like, no, now I need to take that knowledge and better understand who I am and find the right structures and support so I can be my best.
I love that. I want to underline that, because I think if people understand that we can build the structure around us. I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Doug Brackman or his book Driven, but I say it not lightly. His book saved my life, because the phrase I got out of that was different, not broken. And that, I think, is a lot of our people feel broken because, well, why can so-and-so sit through the 5-hour board meeting and not throw a chair,
And that's the thing. I think that's why I was not diagnosed for the longest time, because I could sit still in that boardroom, but
Yeah.
my brain was always on. That's the hyperactivity for me, is my brain is like
Yeah.
going, you know, so fast. So I can sit still, sure, but
Yeah.
boy, my brain is going in almost so many different directions. And then there are others where there's like, they want to throw that chair. They're just, or they need to like jump up and down. They need to like
Yeah.
fiddle with something because they're like, oh, just like sitting still is like the worst for them and they can't think well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, being able to recognize, okay, what's going to help best support my employee, my team, myself, my family. That's what's important. Get to the foundation and then you'll be able to do so many amazing things.
Well, I have a last track, and then we'll wind up. But I think one of the things I see, and we'll get clear on the language, but a lot of people call what we do self-sabotage, which assumes that we know what we're doing, and it almost presumes we're doing it on purpose. But I think if we try to exist in a structure, I'll give you a weird example, but I have a friend who is, he's an accountant, and he refuses to accept that he's ADHD, but he also really struggles to get things done, and he struggles, he's got all of the struggles, but in his culture in particular, you don't have mental health issues. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but he was very much, no, I can't have ADHD. And I'm like, it's not a shame thing. It's how do we get you the support you need? It's with a visible disability. And again, I'm not comparing visible and invisible, but with a visible disability, you can look at somebody and say, you're in a wheelchair. Maybe we need to make this building wheelchair accessible. Yet I have a friend who works in an office, and there's a weird lady, and they all call her weird because she wears sunglasses and a hat because she hates the lights. And it's like, it's the same thing. You need to make adaptation. So I would suspect that you're encountering a lot of shame as well, because we're taught to hide. That's the curse of an invisible disability, is you can hide it and pretend it's not there.
That's right. And because I have clients from all over the world, of course, this is all anecdotal, what I'm saying, because it's just based on my experiences with my clients. But I think I've had over 1,000 clients all over the world. And the common theme is where they are using either their cultural or societal norms to compare themselves and say, oh, this is where I'm broken, or this is where I'm not good enough. All these things where they are self-sabotaging because they're just automatically connecting these things to themselves in a way that doesn't serve them or anyone around them. And so I work really hard with my clients to reframe. It's like, okay, I understand. In your workplace or in your home, this is how things are done. Okay, that's fine. That's external.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the internal. Because I always say to my clients, we're going to work from the inside out versus the outside in. We can't control the outside, but we can control the inside. And that really helps many of my clients go from like that victim mindset to that strategic mindset. It's like, oh, you mean I don't have to be a victim? I'm like, absolutely not. There are going to be things that you can control. So let's look at that. And when you work from the inside out, then things become much easier to manage, because there are certain things we can control, but that doesn't mean we still can't manage it in a way that better works with our brain, not against it.
I love that. And I think it's that. So I'm a Sun Tzu nerd. I love Sun Tzu. And there's a line in there, something I'm going to paraphrase, but basically, if you know your enemy and you know yourself, you never have to fear the outcome of a battle. And I am obsessed. And by the way, you'll find this in a lot of the people I'm going to connect you with. We're addicted to assessments because we love the self-awareness. I'm going to share something with you, but my Colby score is 4592. And you don't need to know anything other than 4 is my fact finder capacity and 9 is my action taking. So when I meet a high fact finder, we will butt heads. It's not on purpose, but I've learned to recognize there are people that need to know all 9,000 things before they start a project. I've already started and created a few prototypes, and I'm on the 10th iteration by the time they go, okay, I have questions. And it's like, what are you waiting for? But knowing who you are can also help, because again, I love fact finders. I just don't want to work with them. They do not belong in my head, because otherwise we just clash and it's ugly. But I love that you're starting inside out, because I think that is so important.
And that's part of my model, where I say that self-awareness leads to self-empowerment, which leads to self-advocacy. The better we understand ourselves, the more empowered we are, because we better understand who we are, and the better able we are to advocate for ourselves. And this is why I love the saying from Brené Brown, a social scientist. She says, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. Well, guess what? That clarity needs to start with ourselves. First, be clear and kind to you, to yourself, and starting from the inside, because then you're going to be able to be clear and kind to others, working to the outside. But you got to start with you.
You and Brené said it much better, because my version is people are less annoying when I do the work on myself. But it's true, because the less triggered I am, the less I'm reading into what other people are doing. And that was my big aha moment. Was I think I was 52 when I figured out that inner peace only exists here, and I was busy looking for it, and I'm like, nope, not here, not here. And then I found it, and I went, oh.
Yeah, inside out.
I love it. Well, I could talk to you all day. You and I are going to have more conversations. Where can people go to connect with you and learn more about what working with you looks like, or how they can just get to know you and your work?
Oh, great question. I mean, in typical, I shouldn't say typical, but for me, as part of my ADHD, one of the things I've struggled with is my website. But it's like that perfectionism, so it's not perfect, but they can still go to my website, and there's like a contact form there that I think is now working. But if they go to farahjamil.com, so F as in flower, ARAHJAMIL.com, they can reach me there. I'm also on LinkedIn, so you can find me, Farah Jamil, and you can just search for the one, because there's a lot of Farah Jamils out there, by the way. I did not know how common my name was until social media. I'm like, God, I'm not the only one. But if you look for executive coach and ADHD coach, hopefully that'll send you to me. And I'm happy to connect with people on LinkedIn. Just send me a note saying, hey, I heard you on Jeff's show. Would love to connect. And that would be great.
Awesome. And for the audience that knows the way this works, connect with me and just say, I really like the episode. Connect us, please. I will make it happen.
Thank you.
So I just want to thank you for hanging out with me and being on the show today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having this space. It was such a joy talking with you today.